which I'm thrilled to do. As always, Ryan Brown from the Next Round Live, joining us on the Farm Bureau guest line. Check out favorites.com and go with the home team, Mississippi Farm Bureau. Happy New Year, my friend.
You too, Richard, and hey, Dan, and Borky. It's good to hear from everyone. We were actually discussing that very move on our show today. I think a lot of people just thought Steve Spurrier Jr. would just elevate to that position, but Briles will be an interesting hire. And the interesting thing we were discussing is on the Sam Pittman side. If you lose Odom and Briles in the same year after what, you'd have to say it was a fairly disappointing year by expectations, that's a big loss for Sam Pittman.
Yeah, I don't know that I anticipated that we would start with Arkansas, but let's do this. Borky's been beating this drum a little bit, going, what's going on in Fayetteville? What's happening with Arkansas? Because you think about it, Sam Pittman is hired, and everybody's like, eh? And then he puts that staff together, where it's Kendall Briles is the offensive coordinator, and Odom is the DC, and does a nice job with the rest of the assistants. But in the last two off seasons, a bunch of transfer portal guys a year ago, 28, I think, at last count this year, and losing a defensive coordinator and potentially losing an offensive coordinator. Feels like kind of a weird situation in and around the Arkansas program right now.
Yeah, and they weren't very good defensively either. So, I know Odom has a good name from his days under Gary Pinkel, and even when he was still the head coach of Missouri, but I'm just not sure how big of a loss that actually is for them. I know you hate to lose coordinators, but that one might be a good time to reset. But the Briles loss, that was something, their offense wasn't really the problem for them when they were healthy. When they had Rocket Sanders healthy and when KJ Jefferson was healthy, that was a good offense, I thought. And you just wonder, and listen, I mean, this is some of the speculation. I am far from having great sources with Arkansas football. But the speculation is obviously that new style, that Briles style of offense, just never could mesh with that old school thinking that, that a Sam Pittman would have from his years of football as an offensive line coach. I mean, I would say that's hard for me to believe, because what did you think you were getting when you hired Kendall Briles as offensive coordinator? I mean, you knew what their offense was going to be. So, I mean, if they did butt heads, maybe so, but I don't know how you could have been surprised by that based on the track record of the Briles family.
So the idea of Kendall Briles as offensive coordinator at Mississippi State, what do you make of that?
Well, I think it's interesting. Zach Arnett obviously taking over as a defensive guy, and I saw Borky tweeting about this after the bowl game. What Zach Arnett did in that situation was amazing. I mean, there's no playbook for that one, man. A sitting head coach passes away. You've still got to play a game, less than a month after his death. Especially, with the recruiting signing period coming up, the transfer portal open. I thought Zach Arnett did a spectacular job, but as Borky said, the clock started as soon as that field goal went through, or that scoop and score to give you the backdoor cover went through.
If you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah, if you keep up with those kinds of numbers. Once that was done, the clock started on Zach Arnett. He's got to put his fingerprint on this program, and I have found it interesting that it isn't just, I'm just going to keep everybody that Mike Leach had and maybe replace one guy. He looks like he's putting his fingerprint on the program. And, a lot of people will say, well, a defensive guy, it's hard to be a defensive coordinator for that air raid offense. He's obviously going to go get a guy that maybe has a little more dedication to the run, which Briles would. But let me tell you what, it's tough being a defensive coordinator sometime for that Briles offense. They can get off the field quickly, either with points or with a 3-and-out. So you didn't exactly go to a smash mouth, slow it down, burn clock offense if you hire Kendall Briles.
We talked about this earlier in the week. I'm curious, knowing that we've still got the national championship to go, and will it be an epic, an immediate, an instant classic, or is it going to be a flop? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see on Monday night. But the bowl season to this point, if you had to assign the bowl season in its entirety a letter grade, what grade would you give it?
So, I would grade it on my curve, which is I have very low expectations, right? I view bowl games, Richard, as primarily exhibition games. And I think more so now with guys that opt out. And I don't have a problem with that, by the way. I'm not one of those, I hate what college football is becoming. I've for years thought bowl games outside the college football playoff are largely exhibition games. Now, that's not to say it doesn't matter to the players. It doesn't matter to the fan bases and the coaches that are getting bonuses potentially from winning those games. But, Mississippi State won the game, right?
Yeah.
Ole Miss lost the game. Alabama won the game. What did that do for you? What did it do for your program? It was a nice send off for Alabama for Bryce Young and Will Anderson, but I think too much is made of, oh, they got a lot of momentum off that bowl win going into the offseason, or oh, they lost that bowl game. That's going to be a tough offseason. I don't really buy into that necessarily. Um, so I say all that to say I would grade this on a curve of, I think bowl games are largely exhibitions anyway. I'd give it a B. I mean, we've had some good ones. We've had some duds. The ones I've watched, I've been fairly entertained. I thought, the semifinals, which I guess you would kind of separate that. It's the best semifinals day we've ever had. Two
Yeah,
good
no doubt.
semifinal games. We've never had that.
Do you think your opinion of bowl games is jaded at all by the fact that you've watched Alabama play in the playoffs so many times? You've had Auburn there a couple of times in the same era, and so maybe you look at it a little bit differently than it's looked at in other places?
Yeah, maybe so. I think it's jaded as much by the old school people that that don't like expansion of the playoff. They didn't like going to 4 teams because we've got to save the bowl system. And I've always wondered, what are we saving there? I mean, well, what are we protecting? And Nick Saban, by the way, in my state, very well respected voice in football, obviously, has said this of it himself. I want to protect the bowl system. And I've never really understood, why would we limit the growth of the game to protect a bowl system? And what are we protecting there, right? That was one of the first things I heard about the expansion to 12 teams is, oh, we got to make sure the bowls get protected into this. Why? Why would you want to play playoff games in a sanitary bowl when you could play them at the LA Coliseum or Bryant Denny Stadium or Walt Hemingway or Scott Field or any of the, Tiger Stadium in Baton Rouge or in Clemson, either one? Death Valley, I guess. It's not Tiger Stadium in Clemson, it's Memorial Stadium. But you get my point, right?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
would we go away from playing those games on campus to protect the bowl system and make sure, the Liberty Bowl survives or the Cotton Bowl survives?
And along those lines, I mean, my only, and I mean only complaint with the 12-team playoff and the way we're going to go about it to start is that those second-round games are not going to be on campus. I think the first round where you're going 5-12, 6-11, 7-10, 8-9. Yeah, you know what I mean. Why I can't put those numbers together doesn't make sense. It's going to be the coolest weekend of college football maybe that we've ever had. Now, I guess some of that's going to depend on how the games themselves play out. But those atmospheres, and we've talked about it 100 times, a year ago, Ole Miss would have hosted a college football playoff game at Vaught Hemingway Stadium. It would have been unlike anything we've ever seen before on the Ole Miss campus. And then you're robbing the top 4 seeds of that opportunity the following weekend because they were better than the other 8 teams that got in. That makes no sense to me.
And by the way, if you are someone that is, and people like, well, the bowls used to matter. Well, they did used to matter because we had a crappy way of picking a national champion. I mean, there were days, I remember as a kid, New Year's days, where numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4 played in 4 different bowl games. Yeah, those games mattered because any one of those teams could have won a national championship. But you know what would have been a better system? If one was playing 4 and 2 was playing 3, and then the winner of that game played for the championship. And we had an actual champion, not just who 63 sports writers thought was the right team. I mean, that was a terrible way of picking a champion. So as we've developed a better way of declaring a champion, the bowl games have certainly lost significance. There's no doubt. But here's the thing. There were 2 bowl games, if I'm not mistaken, 2 bowl games that had fewer than 1 million viewers. And I know you do some work for ESPN, Richard, and you know this well. If they're getting that kind of TV audience, those things aren't dying. ESPN is more than happy to roll out a bowl game that gets 1.5 million, 2 million viewers in the middle of December on a Thursday night. What else can they show that gets that kind of viewership?
I mean, Michael Borky pointed out when we were talking earlier this morning that the Liberty Bowl, that Arkansas-Kansas game, which featured a pair of 6-6 teams on what was a work day for a lot of people and kicked off at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, outdrew Mike Krzyzewski's final game at Duke.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a Missouri and Wake Forest. That was 7-5 Wake Forest, 6-6 Missouri. and they played like a random Thursday night during the Christmas
Yeah.
break. It had 3.5 million viewers.
It's
3.5
incredible.
million. Think about that. It's insane. And
we mind continuing with us on the Farm Bureau guest line. He is co-host of the Next Round. They are based in Birmingham, but available everywhere. You can find them at thenextround.com, nextroundlive.com, right?
that's right.
Yeah.
Yep, that's it.
Nextroundlive.com. If you want to watch, get a podcast, the whole deal. It's all there. Great show. I said I need someone in my corner. I brought up earlier today that the first event of the 2023 PGA Tour season is happening. I'm kind of excited about the Century Tournament of Champions at Kapalua. I mean, it was like crickets, even from Borky, who's a golf guy. He's like, nope, it's not golf season yet. Are you going to watch? Will you tune in? You excited?
100%. Now, my daughter's got a little upward basketball practice here, so I got to take her to that. But I was going to show
coaching?
you. There's my draft. No, I'm not coaching. There's my DraftKings squad. If you want to follow along.
There we go. I like it.
I've got Scheffler, Justin Thomas, Sanjay M, Corey Connors, Aaron Wise, and Ryan Breen. By the way, who's 4 under through 9?
There's no way, Chowder.
What was that autoplay?
He's done it again.
I don't know.
He's
Something on
searching
ESPN's
for
website.
scarves and found an ad. Good job, Richard.
Scarves. Yes. Colin Morikawa currently 8 under par through 15. That is a course where they can put up some numbers if the wind's blowing.
Oh, they can. They had some rain too, so it's going to be soft. So to answer your question, I got a DraftKings team in. So yeah, I'm excited about it. So Borky and Hey Dad can hate all they want, Richard. You and I tonight will be watching a little golf on the Golf Channel.
Just feels unnatural. It's like drinking eggnog in April. It just doesn't fit.
Whatever.
Yeah. To me,
Borky's probably watching some soccer game. What's the soccer game tonight, Borky? Who's playing soccer?
Oh, that's a Hey Dad question. I only watch the Americans. Hey Dad's the commie that watches the European stuff.
I watched Chelsea Manchester City during this show.
How'd that work out?
Not great.
How are my Cannons doing?
Still in first.
Okay, I thought so. I have adopted a team that is running away with the EPL this year, Ryan.
How many times have you watched them, though? That's the key.
And they're just these questions.
Nary a one.
Asking the questions here. Okay, I don't need anything from you on that. Just pick the logo that I liked, and they're actually the Gunners. I call them the Cannons, and Hey Dad is greatly chagrined by that, I think. What's going on in Auburn? So they hire Hugh Freeze, puts the staff together, promises big things with the staff. It's a little maybe underwhelming. Going through this recruiting cycle, trying to kind of get things rolling. What's happening there?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And they're to the portal portion of the cycle. There was some hope among Auburn fans. Now, I'm not saying that Hugh Freeze had plans on this or that it was even a reality that Auburn might get in the Grayson McCall sweepstakes when he was in the transfer portal coming out of Coastal Carolina. But he's chosen to go back to Coastal and exit the portal. So
Why?
that plan didn't work out. Why would he do that, or why would Auburn want him?
Why did he go back to Coastal Carolina? It feels like it ended up like nobody really wanted him.
Yeah, I don't know. I was surprised. They played their bowl game here in Birmingham, and I was a little surprised because he actually started that game. And, with Jamie Chadwell going to Liberty, replacing Hugh Freeze, I thought it was an odd move for him to go back to Coastal. But I think there were Auburn fans that felt like, he would fit in very nicely in a system run by Hugh Freeze. But to your question, the staff, I don't think really blew anybody away. It felt like he got a lot of the old band back together. He hired some guys that's like, okay, I've heard those names. They've been around for a minute. I don't know that they were exactly killing it where they were. So I think the staff was a touch underwhelming, but I do think he did have a nice signing day. He saved a little bit of the recruiting class. It did not go well under Brian Harsin for obvious reasons, and he saved that a little bit on signing day. But now I think the transfer portal is big for him. I think Auburn fans are excited about what he might do with Robbie Ashford, but also wouldn't mind him going out and getting a quarterback of some renown out of the transfer portal if that's still a possibility.
So are you saying it was disingenuous when he talked about how many text messages he's gotten from coaches all over the country that wanted to come and join him on that staff?
I don't, perhaps disingenuous, but the ones he chose to hire didn't necessarily fit the bill of what I thought might be that type of coach that was texting him, if that's what you're asking.
Who's going to play quarterback at Alabama next year?
Most people right now, unless Alabama does something in the transfer portal, which there aren't a ton of indications that they will, would say it is Ty Simpson.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Ty Simpson will be your starter now. Jalen Milroe was the backup, and for those that don't know, he's the one that played against Texas A&M when Bryce Young was out of that game. He finished the Arkansas game, and that went fine. The Texas A&M game, not so much. So Ty Simpson was the guy everyone was excited about, and you just haven't seen much of him. But you didn't see a ton of Bryce Young either, to be fair. So
yeah, that's true.
I would say Ty Simpson would be your odds-on favorite to be the starter next year, and it wouldn't stun me if Jalen Milroe were trying a different position. That would not be the most shocking thing in the world to me.
There's clearly a lot of athleticism there with Jalen Milroe. It's funny when you think about the evolution of the quarterback position at Alabama when you're talking about Jalen Hurts transitioning to Tua and then transitioning to Bryce Young and all the success that's been had there. And I've heard people pretty close to the Alabama program that whisper quietly, because you're afraid to really say it out loud, that Ty Simpson has a chance to be as good, if not better, than any of those guys, which is an awfully big statement.
Well, I think, nobody was surprised really that Tua was as good as he was. I think everyone was surprised Mac Jones was as good as he was.
And I forgot about him in that line.
Yeah. And, he only played the 1 year in the COVID year. He did finish the 19 season, obviously, for Tua, who couldn't finish it after he got hurt at Mississippi State. And I think people knew Bryce Young was going to be good, but I think people are surprised maybe at the level at which he played. You could argue he's the best quarterback ever to play at Alabama, and I think it's a very valid argument. So, if Ty Simpson's anywhere in that class of Mac Jones, Tua Tagovailoa, and Bryce Young, Alabama, Alabama they've caught lightning in a bottle yet again. That'd be tough to do that 4 straight times. But to your point, that's what a lot of people think about this kid. That's kind of the word on him in Alabama camp.
So, Brownie, Haydad has got a little bit of a working theory, thinking forward to SEC Media Days next year, that we could potentially be trending toward a year where neither Alabama nor Georgia is the overall pick to win their division. Can you get on board with that idea at all?
Less Georgia than Alabama. So I guess his working theory would be LSU's the pick in the West, right?
In the West. And maybe Tennessee is the pick in the East.
If Tennessee had Hendon Hooker coming back, maybe. I just think people – so you guys know the media, so you know that they vote heavy on returning quarterback. And that will help. Obviously, LSU will not help Alabama, but it won't help Tennessee either. And I think that's one of the fascinating ones to watch. I would assume Joe Milton is the starter, but Nico Iamaleava, people rave about that kid much in the same way you're talking about Ty Simpson in Alabama. So I don't know. That would be hard for me to believe. I know Georgia will lose a lot again, including Stetson Bennett, but that would be hard for me to believe Tennessee would edge them in the voting. I could see LSU maybe edging Alabama. That wouldn't stun me, especially since they beat them on the field this year. But Tennessee edging Georgia might be surprising to me. I don't think both of them. Maybe one of them, not both of them, though.
Would you vote for either LSU or Tennessee?
No, I think I'd still vote Alabama and Georgia.
And I kind of adopted a few years ago that until proven otherwise, I'm just voting Alabama first every year.
Exactly. I mean, otherwise in the West now, look, LSU's won. If you go the last 4 years, LSU and Alabama have won the West the same amount of times. So, there is, you could talk yourself into voting LSU, and I really wouldn't have a problem with that. I mean, I think they're going to be good next year. And I got a lot of faith in Brian Kelly. But I still, with Alabama playing that game in Tuscaloosa, I still think I would go Alabama there. I think I'm going to have faith in Alabama until they let me down big time. So they didn't let you down big time this year. They lost a kick at the horn and a game in overtime at LSU on a 2-point conversion. So until Alabama just really falls in their face the way A&M did this year, I think I'll keep voting Alabama.
Yeah, my chuckle there just briefly was the highest of highs and the lowest of lows for LSU in a 4-year window. I wish I had held time for us to talk about Bobby Petrino to Texas A&M. Maybe we'll do that next time. We probably can have some fun with that. Ryan Brown from the next round.